Hello, it's Tony again, Tony Cole. Now, I don't know if you've been paying attention, but the BBC has been celebrating the 100th birthday of that quirky and ever so British institution, the shipping forecast. But there's a wonderful side story from 1972, which, for some reason, they've missed from the celebrations. If you haven't heard it, the shipping forecast sounds like a rather strange cross between a conventional weather forecast and an Anglican church service. Something like this. There are warnings of gales in sea areas Fisher, German Bight, Biscay, Fastnet, Seoul, Shannon, Viking, Forties, Dogger, and so on. And then individual forecasts for each of the 31 sea areas around the coastlines of Great Britain and Ireland. For a BBC announcer, it's a great honour to be chosen to read the shipping forecast. It's a very privileged, premium, prestige thing. Back in the day, the announcers were all absurdly posh, although nowadays they are more diverse. One night in 1972, the duty announcer, Roger Moffat, read the shipping forecast perfectly in his plummy tones, and then popped into the studio next door where his mate Keith Skues was presenting a programme called Night Ride. "So, what's the weather like?" says Keith on air. "Awful," says Roger. "Gale force 28 and a half." Well, it was, of course, a joke. But when you're in a BBC studio having a laugh with your mate, it's hard to keep in mind that you are the BBC, the voice of authority, even of God. So all around the stormy, windy coast of the UK, the skippers of fishing craft and merchant vessels, listening to crackly radios out there on hostile seas, took it seriously. They headed for home in droves. Major incident. The following morning, Roger Moffat was sacked from the BBC. So what's this got to do with me? Not a huge amount, I admit, except that Roger and I both ended up in the Yorkshire city of Sheffield. The guy who asked about the weather that night at Radio 4, Keith Skues, was now in charge of Sheffield's commercial radio station, Radio Hallam. He offered Roger a job. Maybe he felt guilty. I was a reporter on the city's morning daily newspaper, the Sheffield Morning Telegraph, God rest its soul. The paper and the radio station were in the same building, and the staff shared the same watering hole, the same local pub, which was called the Dove and Rainbow. One evening in the Dove and Rainbow, I spied an eccentric-looking character staring moodily into space, nursing a large whisky. He wore a pilot's hat with furry flaps that kept his ears warm, and a voluminous tartan cloak, yes, tartan, and he carried a walking stick with a bell on the end so that he could attract the attention of bar staff with the minimum effort. "Who's that?" I asked a colleague. "Oh, that's Roger Moffat," they said. "Grumpy sod. He once told a joke that had all the fishing boats of Great Britain scurrying for port." "Blimey," I said. Then Roger waved his stick and a bell rang. "Large Scotch," he said. "Be quick about it." Now, I don't know what the moral of this story is exactly, except perhaps funny old world. And if you're very posh, in the United Kingdom at least, you can still get away with absolutely murder, particularly in broadcasting.